Well, welcome to the fourth edition of the Design Review, the podcast for engineering your life. It's June 4th today, they're 5th, actually, the day that we're recording. And my guest today is Dani Maldonado. Welcome, Dani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, Robert. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we've had a chance to chat once before, and it was really enjoyable and really resonant. So
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to having this chat today. So cool. You're here. Would you like to say a little bit about you and possibly the project that you've been working on, just to kind of give everybody kind of an idea of where we're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Dani Maldonado. You may or may not have seen me on LinkedIn or Facebook if you're old school. I am the owner and operator of Your Social Media Help Desk, which is a free resource on Facebook for entrepreneurs, business owners, or anyone that is social media interested to learn how to get started.
Cool. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. And what this is design review. So the kind of the format for this is we talk about a project that you're either engaged in or interested in being engaged in. What is it you'd like to talk about today?
I'm currently engaged in a couple of different projects for myself and for my clients. So currently, for myself, I'm working on launching Your Social Media Academy, with is a low-ticket monthly membership program with ongoing live trainings and support for entrepreneurs, virtual assistants, anybody that's looking to break into social media for their own business, whether they own a business or they're looking to make that their business. And that provides, like I said, resources, support, and ongoing community trainings that are actually voted on by the members of the community. So I don't do the one size fits all kind of coaching industry, follow this 4 steps framework and you'll get $1 million. I like to be realistic in the approaches and provide actual frameworks for real strategies that you can tailor for yourself. And then the community will be voting on what type of content they'd like to see in future trainings. Right now, I've got about 6 or 7 that are getting recorded this month to go into our vault for the students. And then once we get the students in and we live launch this summer, we'll start the feedback loop of asking them, what type of content do you need help with? So we're not going to be providing you with how to find clients if you're not actually looking for how to find clients. If you need help with copywriting for social, then we find the individuals that can help us develop a training for copywriting for social to provide that training to you, and then it gets housed in the vault. So that's something that I'm really excited about launching because it's just something I wish I had when I first started out.
Yeah, and you've been doing social media for a while.
Yeah, 11 years in the game. So I started in 2014, kind of as a hobby. Like I stumbled into this. It wasn't something that I didn't wake up one morning. I was like, I'm going to be a social media manager. I started a Facebook group for a video game that I was a fan of, and it kind of, not overnight, but very quickly grew to 60,000 plus members. And it was like a crash course in community building, which I had never done before and didn't even realize that you could get paid for that until about 2018.
So you were doing it pro bono for 4 years?
Yeah. So the community building aspect and like running large groups of people, yes, I was doing that pro bono for a couple of years as a hobby, and kind of moonlighting as a freelancer in social media management. And then in 2018, I was picked up by an entrepreneur that had a coaching company and was looking for somebody to manage his Facebook groups for the people that bought his programs, because they had like a feedback. You can go into this free group that's a part of this program to ask all of your additional questions. So that was my job to run that and provide content for that to keep it active.
Well, I can certainly tell that you're familiar with the territory by how solidly calm and centered you are in LinkedIn. And
Oh, thanks.
it's one of the reasons that I've enjoyed connecting with you, because you're really real, and you clearly care about supporting people, and you've been around enough to just say, hey, you know, just do this. It's not that big a deal.
Give this a try. Yeah, it's not that deep. I think a lot of people, especially on social media in general, a lot of people kind of make it a little bit more complex than it needs to be. I always look at the content that I am creating and the comments that I leave specifically on, is this something that I would actually say to somebody in person? If I were to remove the screen and this was a grocery store, does this make sense?
Well, I'll say that works because all the stuff that I see you writing, and a lot of it is comments. It's just like, it's really understandable. It really reaches me at a human level, because people preach all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and people perform all the time, even more and even worse, and it makes me kind of roll my eyes. But I don't catch you doing that.
You caught my content about performative LinkedIn, didn't you?
Well, I'll just say that it resonated. But yeah, the thing is, there is a lot of that. In fact, that historic LinkedIn, I just say kind of like the era that was dominant before Weird LinkedIn came in.
Mm-hmm.
That's like all you saw.
Yeah.
And it was really, I didn't get into LinkedIn at all until a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So I had a small stint of LinkedIn when I had a client that was on LinkedIn heavy. And, I worked on their content and on their accounts and was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a shot. And my first stint on LinkedIn was 6 months in 2021. And it was 0 engagement, 0 likes, no impressions. It was dead on arrival. Like, my graphic designer occasionally gave me a thumbs up, so I didn't feel bad, but I was getting like pity likes. And the sad thing is because I made the mistake of moving into LinkedIn and not treating it like how I would normally treat social media. Like, I've been killing it over on Facebook for years at that point, and had really honed my voice of like, just be who you are. I moved into LinkedIn and was like, I need to be professional. I need to wear the suit and tie. And I'm talking about how to grab attention online with no attention grabbing techniques inside
Yeah,
the posts.
it's not a real thing.
So it didn't, I made the mistake of coming to LinkedIn originally and just not being myself. And so that's the hard lesson that a lot of people need to learn is you can't fake a personality, for your personal brand, for your business brand. You can't fake who you are. And so why even bother?
Well,
You could keep it up for a couple of months, but you're not going to get engagement, and then you get tired of it. I did that for 6 months on LinkedIn. And then I did that when I first started as a freelancer back in 2018, when I was the community manager for that coaching company.
yeah.
I felt like I needed to elevate myself so that I could be on the same level as the people that were a part of the company before me, because there was like a group of coaches and mentors that would do live calls, and I was in charge of running like a book of the month club. I was like a peer support person. I wasn't even a mentor, and I'm sitting here going, you have to act different. I should have never done that, because it basically shot myself in the foot trying to be something that you're not. And that's not what they hired me for originally to begin with. They hired me because they liked the content. That's a funny story about how that happened, that we can get into. But they liked the content that I was dropping in their group that I was a part of. And it was pulling more engagement than the people that were actually hired at the time to run that group.
Well,
Same topics.
Oh yeah.
Same topics. Because I was like, I was new to the game about like coaching and stuff like that back in 2017, 2018 when this all happened. So I was like basically mimicking the topic and just providing my own point of view and using my own type of content creation and like using GIFs and just being that personable person that you've come to know. And it worked. They reached out to me and they were like, hey, we want you to run the community. And I was like, what? You're going to pay me? You're going to pay me $1,500 a month to just play on Facebook? Okay.
Well, so many good lessons in that. And I love that you've learned it by living it.
Yeah.
People that get, here's the rules to succeed in this business, but meanwhile they've either only experienced success or they only talk about that. Or there's some other route. They maybe inherited something or whatever.
Or they're book smart. They got the degree. They checked all the boxes the right way.
When you've come through the trenches.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you've been there, and I kind of have my own versions of that. I talk an awful lot about being real and authentic and owning your truth, just because I spent most of my life not doing that and suffering from that process. So what is it that inspired you to launch this project at this time? What showed up that said, hey, there's a need? I have I can imagine, but I'd like to hear your story.
Well, so your social media academy and help desk, I should say, has been around since 2018.
Okay.
So it was an idea that I had back in 2018 when I was working with that coaching company. And I've worked with several coaches since. Sorry, my coffee's starting to hate me. And so I've got a lot of skin in the game in the coaching industry, but I don't typically like to see myself as a coach. And I do see a giant need, especially now with the way that the economy is going, for individuals that were perhaps in my spot. I was a single dad of three. I couldn't handle paying for daycare to be able to work a 9 to 5. I had to get creative. It wasn't necessarily I wanted to live this freelancer lifestyles, fast cars, money, all that fun stuff. It was survival. It was you've got a laptop and you can work 24/7 if you need to be able to pay the bills. Because my origin story of really hustling and getting to the 6-figure mark looked like my wife walked out on me and I had $500 a month in income at the time and 3 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. So we did this out of survival, and I see now, especially with the way that the economy is going, there's more of a need for individuals. Like even in just my own friends group, I've had a couple of people that I went to high school with that have reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, can you help me?" Yeah, I can help you. But I'd rather do that on a much larger scale for like, your stay-at-home moms or even just, the high school kids that are looking at, well, college is super expensive and I don't want to like join the military. The options for creating a life for yourself or the American dream, if you will, are kind of skewed and limited if you don't think outside the box. I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't think outside of the box. If I let my wife walk out and I was just like, oh, okay, well that's it. I'm done for. The rest is history. I could have gone and gotten a dead end 9 to 5 job and gotten on to government assistance again, because I have done that before previously. I mean, we all run into hard times. Could have done that and continued to scrape by and continue to fall into debt, or I could have done what I did, nose to the keyboard, learned everything that I could. I'm a giant sponge when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like I'll watch a whole YouTube series from one content creator just because they taught me one thing that I liked, and I was like, okay, well, neurodivergency. Let's have hyper focus.
Oh, yeah.
Hyper focus.
I hear you.
But no, I do. I see the need for people, even on a higher level. Like people at your level of the game, or like the clients that I'm working on now. They have a need for this level of expertise, this level of information, because they don't have it. But I also don't think that it needs to be something that is too expensive to obtain to your everyday people. The way that we change the social platforms is by teaching people how to be better on social platforms.
Yeah.
I think that everybody should look at the social media platforms no different than a conversation that you're having in person. There's so many people that behind a keyboard will act differently, whether they're being a bully or whether they're acting like they're better than they actually are. Social media is great for, we're going to show you the best 2% of our lives, and all of the other stuff, we're going to brush that under the rug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the brush everything under the rug thing as a child in my childhood home.
Yeah.
I don't do that as an adult, which is why you see that my content has that multifaceted personality. Like, yes, we talk about the wins, but we also talk about the losses. We talk about the things that make us grateful for the wins, because you don't get to this point, at least in my opinion, you don't get to this level of work and intelligence without having some kind of rough patches. And if you did, call me. I want to know what your framework is.
Yeah. That's it's relevant for people today, I think, ever more so than it has been. One, social media and personal branding and individual founder type companies are seem to me to be kind of on the rise. The economy is in such a place that people are looking for something different, either because corporate America is burning them out. God knows I've been there. Or because, people have been laid off in record numbers lately and looking for something new, or people looking for a different way to make a contribution. and then a lot of us are coming in and just like doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And learning some lessons the hard way, or trying to do things in the way that you see them being done. And sometimes the examples aren't the best. So I can definitely see there's a big need for that. Um, so what's the part that you're engaged in creating and evolving now? What's the current
So
project?
right now, like I said, I've got 6 of those trainings. Those are already written and designed. So I do have a graphic designer on my team, and then I have a tech VA as well. So I oversee for my own personal brand, like my own strategy, my content writing, the direction of the art, but I no longer make the art. Which has freed up a lot of time. And that's something that I plan on also teaching within the academy, is how to identify the areas that you're strongest in and how to offboard those other tasks to a virtual assistant. It really changes the outcome when you know where your area of genius is, as a lot of people in the coaching industry will call it.
Yep.
It really changes how you show up. I find that I am far more creative, even though I schedule and plan content months in advance. Like, I'm working on September right now for my personal brand in the planning phase. June is obviously done. July is done and needs just my approval to be like, yep, we can schedule this. And August is being created. So I'm in the planning stages for September right now.
Okay.
So even though I plan and do all of that in advance, I find that it actually helps me be more creative, and it helps me to be able to jump onto like trends and things that fit my brand a lot easier, because I'm not sitting here going, oh snap, what am I posting today? Everybody else is posting about Nick Power t-shirts. I should jump on to Nick Power t-shirts. And like, listen, I love Nick Power, I really do. But I do see that a lot of people try to jump on trends because they don't know what to post about, or they're not planning in advance. I don't know about you, Robert, but I have so many ideas in my head that, like, my notes app, if I showed that to my therapist, they'd probably commit me.
I I definitely identify with that. I'm going to want to dig in because I'm in a phase of I'm looking at getting a virtual assistant. I'm in a space where I've got a new business. I retired not needing to earn money, which is a very
Good place
freeing
to be. Yeah.
place to be. However, if I want to travel, I need income, and if I want my message to reach the people that really need it, I'm going to need to fund it, and I'm going to need to focus, because right now I get distracted by all kinds of things. One, because I have ADHD, so squirrel happens all the time. But also I'm a fountain of ideas. And also there's a lot of levels of detail that I'm having to manage. Now I have hired a bookkeeper, but I'm looking at virtual assistant as one of maybe my next steps, because I'm doing a lot of, like, for example, I've had a lot of people ask to be subscribed to my newsletter. In fact, you're one of them. And so I have buried in my instant messages, in my emails, in my text messages, I have subscribe and email addresses all over the place. I have not compiled them yet.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so,
So
like,
a
it's
VA is
super
definitely.
helpful if I had somebody that could help me do that, and that could help just kind of like even be like a poll system for me for the topics that I'm running. Or so if I'm very seriously considering, looking for a VA, what would you recommend for me in something like this, for a process? And
Yeah. So virtual assistants, you can find them on, different freelancing websites like Fiverr, Upwork. You can source a virtual assistant on LinkedIn even.
I thought about that. I'd like to have somebody that gets what I do and
Yeah.
wants to support it.
Whenever I'm looking for a new team member, one of the first things that I'll do is I'll post on one of my socials and say, hey, I'm looking for, in this case, a virtual assistant. Does anybody have somebody that they recommend? I always start there. I always start looking for a referral, because if they've worked with somebody that's within your network and you know that person, you can get at least a baseline of what their work ethic looks like and things of that nature. If you do have to go the route of Fiverr or Upwork, of course, I treat it like a traditional corporate job interview process from start to finish, like the proposal that they provide, what their follow-up looks like, because I'm busy. I might not be able to schedule that call for them for like a week. And I'm also ADHD and squirrel brained. Upwork, somebody that's not on my team is not my priority at the moment, even if I'm hiring. I know that sounds terrible, but like entrepreneurs will understand you're juggling 1,000 plates.
That's just real.
Sometimes adding that team member gets shoved down to the bottom of the list. And so the people that message me back and follow up and they're like, hey, we talked a couple of days ago. When did you want to get that call going? I'm more likely to hire them, even if I interview everybody, say 10 people applied and 5 of them followed up, the other 5 didn't. All 10 are getting an interview, but the 5 that followed up already have a point in my book.
I hear you, and
because I need to hire a VA that like checks in on me and makes sure that I'm doing everything I need to do, and then also occasionally is like, hey, you're doing great, sweetie.
yeah, that's it's funny. I hired people, in corporate America, and I know that process, but a whole lot of the structure was provided for me, and my world was more like project program management. And I also, towards the end, especially, did a lot of people development stuff, which is part of what had me become a coach. It's just a natural following.
Yeah, people development.
So, yeah,
I in corporate
my
America worked
part of the end of my work was helping people grow in areas that matter to them. So, but I can get caught into that in becoming more about how do I serve you, when the whole point of the VA is so that I can be freed up to do the stuff
so they can serve you.
Only I can do. It's like and in fact, right now I'm working on how do I narrow down the number of things I do so that I'm not trying to do all the things.
What's your tracking system look like? Like, how do you track your day to day? Do you time block? Do you have a schedule currently?
I'm developing a schedule. I've done this very free form, which has been handy. I've tried things I might not have tried if I had too much of a plan. But the way that my schedule works best is if I time block for types of tasks. Like my mornings is physical and spiritual practice. That's how I need to start my day. I'm going to have only a few hours a day to meet with people, whether it's networking or clients or what have you. I'm going to need to schedule time to write because I have books and seminars and things that I need to be writing. There's a lot of work I need to do for legacy. And that will also include, some social media stuff, which I'm realizing I really need to limit, because LinkedIn, as much as it's like an enjoyable connection to my community, can just completely take over my life. And
it is a time consuming.
It has. And well, it's as time consuming as I allow it to be.
Yeah. But you do also see, like, of course, LinkedIn, other social media apps, they do really reward that engagement, right?
Well,
like if you don't engage for a day, you see things plummet. It's back to the whole needing to hire people. When you get to the point of hiring a VA, I started as a VA that was just a little social media savvy. Try to find somebody that is social media savvy if you know that's one of the tasks that you're going to want to put off to somebody else, whether that be tracking your data and your analytics, if that is social listening, so any tag that you have, they can search for your name and see what you've been tagged in and provide you a list of links of like, hey, you were tagged in these posts, make sure that you go over there, like them, comment on them. You can have your VA search for individuals that you can continue to connect with. They don't necessarily have to make the posts for you or comments for you, but they can help you to maximize your time. Like you could tell your VA, hey, spend an hour today, scroll through LinkedIn, send me the links to all of the posts that you think I should comment on. And then at the end of the day, you go in, you click one by one, and rather than scrolling all day long, you spend 20, 30 minutes commenting on everybody's posts and including your actual
that sounds
engagement.
Like that would be helpful, because like my voice is important to me. I don't want to delegate that.
Yeah, I will never delegate my voice. Nope. Will never delegate my voice, even if I get to the point where I have made this like a 6-7 figure company. I'm going to be in that room with the writers that we hire. Like it's we're not We're not getting rid of this.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
but yeah, the VAs can help you with social planning. So kind of again back to that social listening, a lot of the content that you see that I've come out with is just me utilizing my social listening skills. I see like you guys talking about how the algorithm hated you, and I see you guys talking about like visibility concerns or how do I write in my client's voice. So every piece of content that I've created on LinkedIn since about February has been inspired by things that I have seen in the months previous from actual people that follow me. I don't try to think too hard about the content that I create. I want it to be something that resonates with you guys. So I decided I'm just going to write about what you guys are talking about.
And that's fair. And I have my scheme as well. Often, I write a lot of really vulnerable stuff about, I've just like lived through this experience, and I try to do what they say, post about scars, not wounds.
Yeah.
So I talk about stuff that I've already healed and that I can be grateful for, instead of like I'm suffering in this way, and I'm going to kind of be all victimy. So that's what I tend to do. And sometimes it's very real and very in the moment. When I post, I've now posted 4 different spiritual talks, like Sunday morning mini messages. Those are in the moment. Those are like, I just hit record and I have a topic like beauty or forgiveness or something like that, or gratitude. And then I'll just roll with what shows up in the moment. That's a very, I don't plan those. Well, I could even plan out, okay, here's the topic I could have. What I'll say is I have a bunch of sticky notes up on my wall over there for my newsletter, which
Okay.
I'm like now almost 2 months overdue for my second newsletter. So I will say that I've got so many things I want to do. Now I'm having to like choose, okay, what will I do when? And I really could use the help.
Yeah.
What do you think about AI VAs?
So I utilize AI. I know, oh, bad Dani, he utilizes AI.
That,
But like,
yeah.
I think that the individuals, the content creators, the companies that are not looking into how do I utilize AI smartly and ethically are leaving money on the table, and they're going to be left behind. Because like for instance, brainstorming, I'll use AI for brainstorming. I will go and say, hey, I'll write out like a bullet point list of a 1-page Google Doc and be like, these are the topics that I'm thinking about talking about, and then I'll pop that into AI and say, hey, can you branch off from these bullet points an additional 2 to 3 topics, and how would you also provide this to somebody who isn't me? That one's an important thing, is always asking it, how would you provide this to somebody that isn't me? Or how would you provide this to somebody who has absolutely no experience in this field? Especially coming from like the teaching other people how to do things. I found that it has popped out ideas that I may not have thought about, because it's looking at it through the lens of you're teaching somebody that doesn't have the experience that you do. I
Mhm.
fall into that problem of thinking that everything that I know is just common sense.
Yeah.
And like for years, I was like, nobody's going to pay me for this. And the more farther I get into my career, the more I realize that, like, no, I might be at a level 5, for instance, out of 10, but the majority of people are at a level 2. And
Yeah.
so they can absolutely learn from me.
Yeah. Well, that's
But like for virtual AIs, for like managing your time blocking, you can tell it all of the things that you want to do throughout the day, how many hours a day that you can allot to it, and then tell it, give me a schedule between these hours that fit these requirements and also fit in all of these tasks. And it can splice up your time where you're like, 15 minutes in the morning, you're checking your engagement on LinkedIn. And then for an hour, you're going to be working on podcast editing or, reviewing, filming, what have you. It will lay out as many tasks as it can to fit into that calendar. And it looks at it way less emotionally speaking than we do. Like we're going to look at it and go, an hour? That's all I've got? But you'll be surprised how stacking an hour each day works out to be 5-6 hours a week that you wouldn't have actually provided yourself
yeah.
if you didn't have that calendar. I don't really utilize AI for other kind of virtual assistant tasks. So in regards to answering your question of like how would I feel about
Well,
an AI
yeah.
VA, I think it's an interesting idea, but I just don't think it can do everything that like a human VA would be able to do for
Well, and I
us.
think that part of what I would really, I mean, I thought about it just because like I I I don't particularly like using AI for like generation of content, but I like to
Right.
use it for helping stimulate my mind. Although admit, I just conducted a wedding, my first ever, and I fed my AI all of my writings from LinkedIn so that it would get a feel for my style and what I care about. And I had it help me write an introduction in my voice,
Hmm.
based on a bunch of guidelines and criteria, including acknowledging the land and all that. And it did such a beautiful job. I used it like as it was generated.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and I did not have to edit it at all because its input was my writing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I have coffee with mine every morning. I don't know if you know that, like, you can do the voice chat with your AI, or maybe that's just the paid version,
I think
because I
it's the
do have
paid
the
version.
paid.
And I thought about it. I have thought about
I don't remember who it is on LinkedIn that calls it Chat Geppetto, but that's what I call it now.
it.
But yeah, I've got the paid version. And so, like, I have coffee with it every morning with my headset on, just like a, hey, how are you doing? I've trained it to ask me questions like interview patient doctor type back and forth, one
Uh-huh.
question at a time, to kind of just get outside of my own head. Because you mentioned that you wrote some vulnerable stuff recently. That's actually something that I really struggle with. I struggle with writing about my wounds and or my scars.
Okay.
Vulnerability when I grew up as a child, like being soft was not the way, right? It was very brush it under the rug,
Oh
put on a
yeah.
good face, you're better than everybody else. And so maintaining a positive disposition required me to become a little harder on the inside. And so I do struggle with looking at the vulnerable moments. So I will say that I have actually gotten better at writing about my vulnerabilities because of AI. Because I will
Oh.
say, hey, I want to write about this topic, ask me 100 questions about this.
Oh
You know,
wow.
I literally have it interrogate me. There have been times where I will talk about something with the AI to get out all of the ideas so that it can help me structure something. And I'm literally bawling my eyes out because, yes, it's so far removed from my life. It was, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But the question and answers got even deeper and required me
Interesting.
to open up more. And that's how, like, I wrote my most recent newsletter that way. So I wanted to talk about things that were very vulnerable in that newsletter because I've
Yeah.
gotten a lot of feedback from people of like, hey, the small insights of your actual life and who you are, like, I really enjoy that. I
Yeah.
wish I knew more about you. And I was like, let's get as much as we can out of the way here in one sitting. Longest newsletter that I've ever written.
Uh-huh.
I'm actually working on this month's newsletter and I'm hoping it'll be a little bit longer. But I use the AI to help me
Interesting.
pull that out of myself because I also am the kind of person that does better bouncing off of somebody, like in a
Well,
conversation setting.
absolutely. Yeah. And I would not have guessed that honestly about you because you've shown up as being, really real. Like I can tell it's you, not
Yeah,
here's the mask I want to have the
yeah.
world see. So
That
and
took years of therapy, but
oh
yes,
yeah,
I do
well yeah,
show up
no.
as me. But there's part of your life story that I'm sure none of us on LinkedIn know about, and vice versa. Everybody's got, as we
Sure.
call them,
Yeah.
skeletons in the closet. And one of the things that I've really been kind of working on this year, because I've done it before in the past for others, like being the behind the scene person of a personal brand, and the face of the brand needs somebody that outlines like what content you're doing. One of the things that I'm running into this year is now that I've made the decision of like, yeah, we're going to launch the Academy. And originally the Academy was going to be like a faceless company. Like there would be no face.
Mm.
Like I would not be the face of the brand.
Ah.
I was going to be more open sourced for everybody. Just like, yes, I would be there. You would see me on camera, but like no pictures, not a whole heavy into the selfie kind of stuff. Um, And when I made the decision at the beginning of this year of like, no, that's really not the best route. We should really do the personal brand.
Yeah.
Now I'm going, what's the difference between personal brand Dani and actual Dani? And I get that question a lot from people too, is like, where is the line of what content is okay to share and what's not? You know, and like you had said, writing about your scars rather than your wounds
Yeah.
is good advice. But the other advice that I have there is, if you're not sure, write it anyways, and then present it to a friend. Read it out loud.
Sure.
And then also know, are you okay with this being out in the world on the internet for the rest of your life? Because technically, you know, I don't think what's his face that did the post about equating marketing ideas to bra sizes. I don't think he wrote that post originally intending to become a viral sensation and have like the Daily Mail posting about him and things of that nature. But that's also something that I bring into consideration when I'm making content with is, if this were to blow up and go viral because I decided to go a little unhinged, am I okay with that?
Yeah. Well, and I have a lot of freedom because I don't work for corporate America anymore.
Same.
And I've also had a lot of practice through the processes of recovery and all that, of being really open and vulnerable about me. I've had to learn, you know, about oversharing. It's not even a line. It's more like this bizarre Venn diagram that you can't really tell when you've gone too far. But one of the things I've realized is when I'm not doing it as performative sharing, when I'm not sharing for pity, when I'm not sharing for, you know, commiseration or validation, or to get attention.
Right.
That's a tough check in there. When I'm just sharing, and also not to like tell anybody what to do with their life. It turns out that, you know, there's a lot of things that I need.
What is that? The Kruger effect? I think that's what it is. There's some psychological theory that I wanted to test it on LinkedIn. Essentially, it breaks down to the best way to pull engagement is to go to the internet with an incorrect opinion, because people are going to correct you. Like, it's just human nature.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those situations where it's like the attention seeking, and it's in social media itself is one of those weird niches to be in if you like, you don't see yourself as like a narcissistic attention seeking person. Like with the academy and all of that wanting to be a non-face brand, it's because I am actually incredibly shy. Unless I know you, I'm like, I'm gonna go back to working.
Well, and that's part of what makes it appealing. I'm glad that you have chosen to have your face there. I think it brings a lot of character and integrity.
Yeah,
that
I
a faceless
agree.
brand wouldn't otherwise have. You know, in my case, where I stop and engineering your life begins is really hard to tell. You know, engineering your life pretty much is there's part of me that's outside of it.
Well, it falls into that it falls into that joke of we traded our 9 to 5 for a 24/7 and we call it freedom. Like, I'm always on. I might not always be working, but I'm always on. Like, unless I'm sleeping, I think about my business like it's a love child, you know? Like, it's constantly in my head. I'll be watching a movie and like one line will pop up and I'm like, oh, that's a good way of looking at that. Maybe I should write that down because I can make a post about this and I can pull this one line in. Like
that then starts to go into the topic of, you know, how do you find, you know, a reasonable level of, you know, taking care, self-care in moderation in the realm. Well, I just spent 11 days on the island of Kauai and I gave away all my business cards. I brought like 15 or 20 of them. I have some new LinkedIn contacts from that. I have some new potential clients from that trip. It's like, you know, and so, yeah, I bring my world, I bring myself, which my business is a lot of me being
who you are. Yeah.
Because by doing that, I make it safe for other people. That's intentional. I am vulnerable, not to be manipulative. I'm vulnerable so that people are safe being themselves in areas they might not otherwise feel safe in.
It's one of the reasons why I'm so brutally honest in my content about where I've been and how I got here. It's because I want people to see you don't have to go to college and get a degree to work in social media. You don't have to do everything the right way. You can fall flat on your face multiple times. Trust me, I did. I got to six figures, fell flat on my face, and had to rebuild again.
Well,
It
that's a
happens.
really, really good lesson. People, I spent most of my life terrified of failure. I thought that the one mistake
Yeah,
would cause everything, the whole structure to
you
collapse.
thought it would ruin everything for sure.
Yeah, and that drove a lot of perfectionism, a lot of angst, a lot of very, very long work days and work weeks because I was afraid to make the wrong choice. It becomes a whole other topic to talk about driving by intuition, which is what guides me now. But yeah, I like that, the humanity. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I want to connect with you. It's one of the reasons I wanted
Yeah,
to
I
have
mean,
this chat.
especially, I mean, I don't want to throw shade. I don't want like nobody's legal team come for me. But in the coaching industry, there is a lot of this toxic positivity. There's a lot of this, pretend that this is okay. And there's a lot of stuff in the world right now that's not okay. So I don't want to fake it. I don't want to pretend
Yeah.
that like I haven't been through hell and back to get where I am, because I don't want to project a fake image to somebody that follows me that's like, well, if Dani was able to do it and he didn't have any bumps in the road,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I
you
think what
know?
makes it one. There's a difference between what feels polished and what feels real, and what feels real
Yeah. And
infinitely more.
you can polish reality. I do it all the time. Like I'll write something and it'll be super raw and then I'll go, okay, let's scale this back slightly,
Yeah,
because I tend to cuss like a sailor. So like I scale that back a little bit. Because I'm not Gary V. I respect him a lot, but that's just not my brand. I don't cuss constantly.
yeah,
But like, yeah, especially like in the coaching industry, you see a lot of performative humble brags of like, I started out homeless and I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. And it's very whitewashed in a way. They don't talk a lot about the negative. It's kind of mentioned in the beginning, and then there's a CT at the end of buy my course program. I don't want to be that kind of coach. I want to be the person that's like, I know how to do this because I've been here before. Come on, girl, let me help you.
well, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
no gatekeeping of information, no fake scarcities, no FOMOs.
Oh yeah, that,
I don't, I don't, I don't,
manipulation. It just makes me want to hurl.
it doesn't sell anymore. It
And
doesn't sell anymore. People are on to that, especially in the coaching industry. They're on to, click now, only available for 14 more hours until 3 months from now when we have a bill to pay and we throw that evergreen content back out there. And so you'll never find something like that over at your social media help desk. I don't do the fake scarcities. I don't do the, only 50 spots available. If I do something like that, because you have seen like fix your feed on LinkedIn, I only open like 4 spots of that per week, but that's just for time management because it's like an hour-long phone call. And then on the back end, I'm planning strategy and stuff for about 2 to 3 hours per call. It's about 4 hours per person. 4 of those is 16 hours in a week. I
that's
can only work so many hours.
that's almost like my in terms of client time. That's
But
about
the
my
things that are like scalable that you see online all the time, if it's scalable, I don't believe that fake scarcity.
no, and actually, kind of given that and what you were just mentioning, as we're going to probably need to start winding this down. If somebody wants to get in touch with and learn more about, your social media academy, if somebody wants to, what's the best way to reach out to
Yeah,
you or give that a shot?
absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn under Dani Maldonado. On LinkedIn, of course, it has the sparkles. On Facebook, it doesn't. You can join your social media help desk. Help desk is all one word on Facebook. And you can go to the website, yoursocialmediahelpdesk.com.
Awesome. Any last thoughts?
No, I had a blast. We should do it again sometime. I feel like we have so much to talk about that we don't really cover everything, and we go off on a tangent. We could
No,
just do a
we
weekly
got material.
segment.
We got
We could
material.
do a weekly segment, Robert.
We probably could. This has been absolutely a pleasure. I've loved talking with you. And yeah,
Same.
I would like to do an entire one on intuition alone.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
it becomes a panel discussion because there's a number
We'll
of
get into it, and for sure, you did ask about the help with the VA. Um, Shameless plug, your social media help desk does help with that kind of stuff. So we are like that one-stop shop for businesses to get assistance with their social media, with their virtual assistants, things like that. So reach out to me in DMs. I will give you some advice offline about how to, find a good VA, and then hopefully take it from there.
Much appreciated. Well, wonderful. Good to talk to you, sir.
Yeah, it's good to see you again in person. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody.